Beginning in the late 1960s, a killer in Northern California murdered at least 5 people, taunted police and newspapers with a series of chilling letters, and left behind a set of encrypted ciphers, one of which remained unsolved for more than 50 years. He called himself the Zodiac, and despite one of the largest manhunts in California history, despite thousands of suspects investigated over more than 5 decades, and despite the recent breaking of his most famous code, his true identity has never been officially confirmed. This is the story of the Zodiac Killer. The first attack officially attributed to the Zodiac occurred on the night of December 20th, 1968, on a rural road outside the town of Vallejo, California, where 2 teenagers, David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen, had parked on what was at the time a well-known local spot for young couples. According to the account later pieced together by investigators, a car pulled up nearby, and a man approached the couple's vehicle on foot before opening fire, killing both teenagers. There was no immediate indication of a discernible motive, no apparent robbery, and no clear connection between the killer and his victims, details that would come to characterize the case as it developed over the following years. Investigators at the time treated the killings as a tragic but seemingly isolated act of violence, with no evidence initially suggesting the crime was part of any larger pattern. That assumption changed roughly 6 months later, on July 4th, 1969, when a nearly identical attack occurred at a different location outside Vallejo, this time targeting Darlene Farron and Michael Mageau, another young couple parked in a car. The gunman again approached on foot and opened fire, killing Farron and severely wounding Mageau, who survived the attack and would later provide investigators with a physical description of the assailant, one of the only surviving witnesses in any of the killer's confirmed attacks to see him directly and live to describe him. Roughly 3 weeks after this second attack, local newspapers in the San Francisco Bay Area received a set of letters, each containing a portion of an encoded cipher, along with a claim of responsibility for both the December and July shootings, and a demand that the newspapers publish the ciphers in full on their front pages, accompanied by a threat that the killer would continue his attacks if this demand wasn't met. The letters were signed with a distinctive symbol that would become permanently associated with the case, a circle bisected by a cross, a symbol the killer would continue using in nearly all of his subsequent correspondence, and one that, combined with his chosen name, gave the case its lasting identity. The 3 newspapers that received these initial ciphers ultimately complied, publishing them as demanded, and within days, a schoolteacher in Salinas, California, along with his wife, successfully decoded the message using primarily manual cryptographic techniques, without any specialized computing assistance. The decoded message, once solved, revealed a rambling, disturbing statement in which the writer expressed enjoyment in killing, compared the act to hunting the most dangerous game, and suggested that his victims would become his slaves in an afterlife, a message that offered investigators and the public their first genuine insight into the killer's state of mindset, even as it provided no concrete information about his actual identity. The killer's next confirmed attack occurred on September 27, 1969, at Lake Berryessa, a reservoir in Napa County, where he approached 2 college students, Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard, who were having a picnic. In an escalation from his previous attacks, the killer this time wore a distinctive costume, a black hood covering his entire head, with a white symbol resembling the same cross and circle design displayed prominently on his chest, and carried both a gun and a knife. According to Hartnell, who survived the attack, the killer claimed to be an escaped convict in need of the couple's car and money, before ultimately binding both victims and stabbing them repeatedly. Shepard died from her injuries days later. Hartnell survived, providing investigators with another rare first-hand account of an encounter with the killer. Following this attack, the killer contacted police directly by phone, and shortly afterward mailed another letter to a newspaper, claiming responsibility for the Lake Berryessa attack, and, notably, referencing details of the crime that hadn't been publicly released, information investigators considered strong, corroborating evidence connecting the letter's author to the actual killer. The killer's final confirmed murder occurred on October 11, 1969, in San Francisco itself, where he shot and killed taxi driver Paul Stine. This attack differed from the killer's previous rural, secluded crime scenes, taking place instead on a city street, and resulted in one of the case's most significant, if ultimately inconclusive, breaks. Police, responding quickly to reports of the shooting, actually encountered a man matching the general description of a possible suspect near the scene. But due to a since-disputed initial radio description characterizing the suspect as black, when witness accounts actually described a white man, officers did not pursue or detain him. A critical and much-discussed failure in the case's early investigation that some researchers have argued may have allowed the killer to evade capture during what was, in retrospect, one of the closest actual encounters police had with him during the entire active period of his crimes. In the aftermath of the Stine murder, the killer's communications with the press escalated considerably, both in frequency and in the scope of his claims. He sent a piece of Stine's bloodied shirt to a newspaper as proof of his involvement, and began writing letters claiming responsibility for a growing number of additional murders beyond the 5 killings investigators were eventually able to confirm through physical and circumstantial evidence. Claims that, while impossible to entirely verify or dismiss, significantly complicated the overall scope of the case and the total number of victims potentially attributable to him. Over the following years, the killer continued sending letters to Bay Area newspapers and, in some cases, directly to individuals he seemingly targeted for correspondence, including at least one letter addressed to a prominent attorney. And, in a detail that captured significant public attention at the time, a series of letters addressed to a well-known television personality, whom the killer seemed to select as a kind of public intermediary for his ongoing communications. These letters continue to include additional ciphers, taunts directed at investigators, and claims regarding both past and threatened future violence, sustaining intense media coverage and public fear throughout the greater San Francisco Bay Area for years after his last confirmed murder. The most famous of these ciphers, a considerably longer and more complex encoded message than the one solved shortly after his first murders, became known as the 340 cipher, referring to the total number of characters it contained. Unlike the earlier, comparatively simpler code broken within days of its publication, the 340 cipher resisted every attempt at decryption for more than 50 years, despite sustained efforts from professional cryptographers, government code-breaking specialists, including reported attempts by both the FBI and the National Security Agency, and a vast, global community of amateur code breakers who continued attempting to crack it throughout the following decades. That 50-year impasse was finally broken in December of 2020, when a team of 3 independent code breakers, working collaboratively and using a combination of manual analysis and computer-assisted pattern recognition, successfully solved the 340 cipher, a breakthrough confirmed and formally accepted by the FBI shortly after the team's solution was made public. The decoded message, once solved, proved to be considerably less revealing than many had hoped after 5 decades of anticipation, containing no confession of identity, no address, and no direct new evidence pointing toward a specific suspect. Instead, the message largely echoed the same taunting, nihilistic tone found in the killer's earlier confirmed communications, expressing a similar claimed enjoyment of killing and dismissing the possibility that he would ever be identified or caught, a conclusion that, while resolving one of the case's most enduring individual puzzles, did little to advance the broader question that has defined the case since its earliest days. Who is he? Throughout the decades since the killer's confirmed attacks, investigators across multiple California jurisdictions, along with the FBI, have investigated an extraordinarily large number of potential suspects, a pattern in some ways comparable to other prominent unsolved cases of the era, in which the sheer volume of circumstantial leads, tips, and named individuals has made reaching any single, universally accepted conclusion increasingly difficult with each passing decade. Among the most persistently discussed named suspects over the years was Arthur Lee Allen, a man investigated extensively by law enforcement beginning in the early 1970s after being named by an acquaintance as a potential suspect. Allen matched certain aspects of witness descriptions, had access to a type of watch bearing a symbol some investigators considered similar to the killer's chosen cross and circle design, and exhibited behavior during police interviews that some investigators found suspicious. Despite years of sustained investigation, however, physical evidence connecting Allen definitively to the crimes, including fingerprint and, in later years, DNA analysis conducted on surviving physical evidence from the case, ultimately failed to produce a conclusive match, and Allen was never formally charged before his death in 1992. In subsequent decades, additional named suspects have been proposed by various independent researchers, journalists, and, in some cases, family members convinced of a relative's involvement, drawing on varying combinations of circumstantial evidence, handwriting analysis, and personal conviction. Though none of these theories has achieved anything close to consensus acceptance among law enforcement officials or the broader community of researchers who have studied the case's physical evidence. Most closely, handwriting analysis in particular has played a recurring and often contentious role throughout the case's history, with numerous proposed suspects either implicated or ruled out based on comparisons to the killer's confirmed letters. Though the reliability and consistency of this specific type of forensic analysis has itself remained a subject of ongoing debate among experts. DNA evidence has offered similarly incomplete progress over the years. Investigators have, at various points, attempted to extract usable genetic material from surviving physical evidence connected to the case, including from the killer's letters and from physical evidence recovered at crime scenes, with mixed and often inconclusive results, complicated significantly by the substantial time that had already passed before more advanced DNA analysis techniques became available, along with questions about the degree to which older evidence had been contaminated or degraded during decades of prior handling and storage. The case's official investigative status has varied by jurisdiction over the decades, with different California police departments involved in the original attacks, periodically reopening and closing their respective portions of the case as new leads, tips, or forensic techniques became available, without any single agency ever announcing a definitive, universally accepted resolution. The FBI's own investigation into the case, while continuing to accept and review new information periodically submitted by outside researchers and tipsters, has likewise never resulted in a formal, confirmed identification of the killer. The Zodiac Killer case has, in the decades since the killer's last confirmed communications in the early 1970s, become deeply embedded in broader American popular culture, extensively covered across books, documentaries, and dramatized film adaptations that have drawn on the case's distinctive combination of genuine, well-documented violence, an extended and taunting correspondence with both press and public, and a series of unresolved ciphers that captured public fascination in a manner relatively unusual even among other prominent unsolved serial murder cases from the same general era. Part of what has sustained this fascination, beyond the inherent tragedy of the killer's confirmed victims, is the unusual volume and specificity of first-hand material the killer himself provided throughout the active period of his crimes and communications. Dozens of confirmed letters, multiple ciphers, and a self-selected, distinctive symbol and chosen name that gave the case a level of ongoing narrative continuity considerably more direct and personal than is typical in unsolved serial crime investigations, with a perpetrator, by definition, otherwise remains almost entirely undefined beyond forensic and circumstantial evidence alone. More than 5 decades after his last confirmed murder, and despite the eventual solving of his most famous remaining cipher, the Zodiac Killer's true identity remains formally unconfirmed, and the case remains officially open within several California jurisdictions. Investigators, researchers, and surviving family members of his victims continue to hold out hope that continued advances in forensic technology, particularly in the field of DNA analysis and genetic genealogy that has proven successful in resolving other long-dormant cold cases in recent years, may eventually provide the conclusive answer that more than 50 years of investigation, thousands of named suspects, and an extraordinarily well-documented trail of the killer's own words have not yet been able to deliver.